Hello everyone, this is Principles of Macro and I'm Sebastian Y. In this video we're going to do a numerical example of the equilibrium in an open economy. I'm going to assume you watched the last video and so you know where we're headed, so we can jump right in. First of all, the elements that are given are going to be our saving function, S, which will be negative 200 plus 10,000 R, and our investment function, I, equals 1,000 minus 10,000 R. You'll notice that these are the same saving and investment functions that I used for our example of a closed economy way back when we did that. What's new is a function for our net capital outflow, which will be 300 minus 10,000 R. This is all the information we'll need for the loanable funds market, but once we get down to the foreign currency exchange market, we will need the function to determine net exports, which will be 500 minus 500 E, where E is our real exchange rate. We're going to start in loanable funds and recognize that the demand function in the loanable funds market is now I plus NCO, and so we're going to add those up. We'll have 1,000 minus 10,000 R plus 300 minus 10,000 R, and that will come out to 1,300 minus 20,000 R once we've collected all the terms. Next, for our equilibrium in the loanable funds market, we must have S equals I plus NCO. So to get that done, we'll have negative 200 plus 10,000 R equals 1,300 minus 20,000 R. Collect terms and solve for R. So we'll add 200 to both sides to get 1,500 over here. Add 20,000 R to both sides to get 30,000 R over here. And then divide both sides by 30,000 to get an equilibrium real interest rate of 0.05. From here we can plug that into all of our functions to get first S equals negative 200 plus 10,000 R, which we now know is 0.05. 10,000 times 0.05 is 500, minus 200 is 300. Domestic investment, I, is 1,000 minus 10,000 R, which we now know is 0.05. 1,000 minus 500 is 500. And finally, net capital outflow is going to be 300 minus 10,000 R, which, as before, 0.05. 300 minus 500 is negative 200. Now we can check our work using this equation right here. S is 300, I plus NCO, 500 minus 200 is also 300, and so that should give us some confidence that we have done our math correctly. Before we do foreign currency exchange, let's go ahead and draw the graphs for loanable funds and net capital outflow. We're going to draw our loanable funds graph over here on the left, and our net capital outflow graph next to it. We'll label both of the vertical axes with R. For loanable funds, the demand function is I plus NCO equals 1,300 minus 20,000 R. On our loanable funds axis, that's going to give us an intercept of 1,300, just plugging 0 in for R. And for the intercept on the R axis, we need I plus NCO to be equal to 0. So we're going to take 1,300 divided by 20,000, and that's going to be 0.065. Then we will go ahead and draw that in and label that I plus NCO. Next, we will remember that our saving function is negative 200 plus 10,000 R. This is going to have an intercept on the R axis of 200 divided by 10,000, which is 2%, 0.02. I'll eyeball that about a little less than a third of the way down here. And then we know that our equilibrium interest rate is 0.05. With a national saving of 300. We can then draw in our saving curve through this intercept and then through our equilibrium. Now we're going to think about our NCO curve over on the right-hand graph. Recall that NCO is 300 minus 10,000 R. First of all, we're going to recognize that our NCO can be positive or negative, and so I'm going to make a vertical line down the middle of this graph and label that 0. From there, we need to think about the interest rate at which NCO is exactly equal to 0 by setting NCO equal to 0 and solving for R. 300 divided by 10,000 is 0.3. So I'm going to find where that is approximately on our graph and draw that all the way across both graphs. And then I'm going to draw in my NCO curve so that it crosses through that point. The last thing we need to do for right now is to carry over our equilibrium interest rate of 0.05 all the way over to the NCO graph, because that's going to be the point of our NCO, which we calculated a minute ago as negative 200. Now we're ready to go over to the foreign currency exchange market. The key to foreign currency exchange is the equation NCO equals NX. We already know by plugging the real interest rate of 0.05 into the NCO that NCO is going to be negative 200. Net exports, we're going to use the function that we introduced at the beginning of the video, which is 500 minus 500 times real exchange rate. Then all we need to do is collect terms and solve for E. So I'll add 200 to both sides, add 500E to both sides, and then divide both sides by 500 to get E equals 7/5, or 1.4. Now let's go back up to the graph and finish this up. For the foreign currency exchange market, I'm going to draw in a graph immediately below NCO. The axes are going to be the exchange rate and the quantity of dollars exchanged. The supply in this market is going to be a vertical line at negative 200, which is the NCO that we found earlier. I'm also going to bring our 0 line all the way down. And then I'm going to draw in our downward sloping net exports curve, label our NCO curve as well. And then we will note that our equilibrium exchange rate is going to be where NCO crosses NX. That's going to be 1.4. The last thing I want to note on this graph is the point where NX crosses over the 0 line. That gives us exactly balanced trade, and that's going to happen where 500 minus 500E is equal to 0, and we can see that that's going to happen where E equals 1. And so I'm going to go ahead and graph that in. So what we get from this is that the loanable funds market, where S equals I plus NCO, determines the interest rate. The interest rate will then determine net capital outflow, specifically whether it is positive or negative. Here you can see we got a negative net capital outflow. That means that more US assets are flowing to foreign ownership than the other way around. And it also means, since NCO equals NX, that we have a trade deficit. That is, 200 more dollars worth of goods are being imported than are being exported. Finally, we get the exchange rate of 1.4, which means that US goods are more expensive than foreign goods. Had it been less than 1, it would have been the other way around. This has been a numerical example of equilibrium in an open economy. In the next video, we'll look at some comparative statics.